it's time for us to have the meeting, and there's enough quorum for the meeting. So today we have arranged a meeting that is like for the financial year 2015 and 16, the arrangement for creating and increasing expenditure ceilings for commitment items by including relevant provisions in the estimates of expenditure. Like for 2015-16, instead of submitting relevant funding proposals to the Finance Committee for approval. And with such a arrangement, the arrangements the government has on 2015 January 19th that we have we will withdraw four of those 2013-14 items for provision. So we have included this in the 2015 to be passed through this for estimate for expenditure estimate of expenditure, but then members has raised it arguments, and we on February the 4th I've given written explanation, but we have mentioned that if there's any further questions after the written response, I can call for a special meeting to discuss related matters if there's further questions. So Lee Chuk-yen on March the 4th and 26th, he has withdrawn based on the 4 items and other 21 items, all those legal procedures and matters that he has raised at queries. And Kok Wing Hung on February the 4th has also written to raise question and ask for a special meeting to follow up on the matter. The government on March 11th submitted a supplementary note and requested the legal services department to based on the related matters to provide information, and then the secretarial department has prepared the legislative council prepared some documents on the practice of the finance committee in examining government estimates of expenditures and approving public expenditures dated March 12, 2015 for the members to refer to. The members present today will be Professor Casey Chen, Secretary for Financial Services and Treasury, Ms. Elizabeth Shea, Permanent Secretary, Financial Services and Treasury, Esther Leung, Deputy Secretary for Financial Services and Treasury. And would like to ask Mr. Chen to start. Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to go give a detailed speech on this because anything pertaining to this matter, the government's way of handling and a standpoint I have prepared it and mentioned in the document prepared for this meeting. So I would make use of the time to reply to any questions raised today. And I thank the Secretariat having done such a lot of work, allowing us to know how legal matters are being handled. So for the legal services, can you tell us briefly? Our document is the LS50, and I'll ask Ms. Fong to introduce the document briefly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, from the concerns raised by the members, we have picked it into 2 parts, and one is the proposal we have included in the relevant provisions, and there's nothing no previous basis, and then the way how do the Legislative Council review this matter, the procedure. So we have prepared the LS50 document. When we were studying these 2 issues, we have looked into under the basic law and the public expenditure related regulations that has stipulated the legal framework for such handling. in our document number this, the second, three and fourth, fifth, and sixth paragraph, that we have referred to 2010 to 2011, which we have prepared similar document. And since that there hasn't been much change, we just quoted that. And the vital point is based on the basic law. If there's any a public expenditure that has to be referred to the Legislative Council for approval, in the public law, that we have the Legislative Council have to submit the proposals, and if that has been approved as they approve the estimates of expenditure, that but if there's any further change during that fiscal year, you still have to get the Finance Bureau's committee's approval. That's the legal requirement, and I have referred to the court how they look at the Legislative Council and the administration department, how they handle such matter. And the third paragraph, in the year 2007, the High Court, based on one case at that time, the judge who is now the Mr. Ha, the judge of the final. The Court of Final Appeal now, he mentioned that you have to meet the requirement of separation of powers based on administration and legislature. The basic law guideline is that a interactive way. One is going to start up, and the other party will respond. So during this finance or in financial management, according to the case, the judge mentioned that the administration and legislature will prepare such policy, and so based on proposal, they will express that, and the legislature will prepare the regulation and pass this law. And in paragraph 3, we have shown that and show how the this is being looked at. So with public expenditure and regulations, if this is approved by law to make such proposal, we have included in paragraph 4. So we feel that if the financial secretary for any particular fiscal year, if there's any expenditure and if the government knows that they have to make those expenditure, the financial secretary can, according to the public expenditure regulations, he can include this in the estimates of expenditure. But if there's any new expenditure during that year which has not been allotted, a provision, no provisions has been made for that, then we have to go for the Finance Committee for such approval. And then with such proposal, after the Legislative Council, how do they review such proposals? It's all listed out, and you can refer to paragraph 7 of the document. And if you can see that, after they have referred to regulations, the way they handle it, the Legislative Council will, when reviewing, studying this proposal, all the members will follow the following procedures. They will debate and vote on it, and that would include members raising revisions and questions. And besides that, in this funding proposal, before it's being approved, the committee, the Finance Committee, will have meetings to look into the detail of that fund, that proposal, and all members can, based on all written information, can raise questions, and at the meeting they can, based on those written replies, and raise questions to. And of course, such procedures will be handled through meeting past practices, and such past practices has been developed in accumulated over many over the years. So if you want to refer to those, you can ask for that. So now I'd like to ask the secretary to talk about their document. The related document will be the document like FC 123/14 to 1501, and based on the finance committee's function, and which include the approval, and number 67 for the legislative council chairman. They have they will study those proposals, and if they approve and revise proposals, and any revised proposals will be followed based on the Ordinance 8, and the third item will be according to Legislative Council number 29, that those past related documents, that where would they take it? Well, which are the funds that they should be taken out of? And the document we have listed all those related examples, relevant examples, and also the government's submitted proposals, and the different the types, we have all listed that out too. And in the last part, normally for government, when the documents submitted to the government, the format, the relevant information and items have all been listed too. And the financial committee, the way you operate, I'm sure that you're all very familiar, and I will not discuss talk about it in detail. If you need any information, I can elaborate on that. And before you on your desk, there's a revised document, the page 3, item 9. There's an example. The previous example was on the in 701 for the computer, opening up a new information structure. The expenditure should come for the government's particular department, and not it's not part of the revision of the estimate of expenditure, because those expenses should come out from the government's revenue, normal general revenue. That's why we have such a revision. So I would like the members to raise questions, and if you would ring the bell, and I will set the time for the first round, including the legislators and the legal consultants' answer will be 5 minutes. Yes, good morning. That would be. I would like to ask the content. I can see that there's no mentioning of the normal constitution practices, such as what I've written to the chairman on February the 4th, 2015, the nurse kind made, if there's any new or continuous recurring expenses, you cannot just put it in the Appropriation Act. So then I can see there's no mentioning in the constitutional practice, and I think that there's a very important element. So I just want to know why the legal services, the legal consultant did not include that. Yes, based on the constitutional practices, the reason why it's not mentioned in our document is that with the SAR operation of Hong Kong, in certain vocabulary use, we will use practice and procedures. And practice and procedure would be would has a kind of a long history. and it is through like a long time experience before it's being established, and up to which time that it's become a constitutional practice, then we have to refer back to as what Judge Hardiman we have to look. It has to be a continuous practice. If it's not like a practice today, it doesn't mean that it will not be tomorrow. It's an interactive way, issue based on each guideline or regulations, the certain action and the procedure taken for each individual case. If there's any deviation, there's a legal consequence, and you're talking about some kind of penalty. As for the constitutional practice in law, even if there's no nothing to base on, they will not immediately create a legal consequence or have any penalty at that moment. That I understand. Before, you're also one of the members for legal matters. We will refer to the British, the UK, Erskine made to see UK and other democratic countries when they handle such matters things that are derived from that. So it's a very common experience, and that is things that we refer to frequently. From my understanding is that if we do not have any particular issues, we will follow such constitutional practices. So I don't know why it was such an important issue that the document did not mention this, what we have done, making reference to this book to see if there's any relevant clauses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With Hong Kong's public expenditure finance is different from that of the UK. With their framework, there is actual difference. In finance management, especially targeting at the government's normal income. Since 1983, they have created an ordinance that and work based on that. And according to the ordinance number 3 and 4, this is about the core of the entire ordinance, any kind of based on government expenditure, income, will be recorded in the Jeffrey reference account. I understand that, but can you briefly tell me, do you think that what mentioned in my letter of Sky made, that constitutional practice is is not applicable to Hong Kong? Is that what you mean? I have noticed that what Mr. Kok has mentioned in the letter they issued to the Finance Committee, page 14, page 715, which was quoted. If I may say that half of that is based on because it's in English.
Functions which are to be exercised on a continuing basis and which are to be financed out of money to be provided by Parliament through the Annual Appropriation Act should be authorized by specific act supported by a financial resolution and not by the Appropriation Act alone.
So, Mr. Chairman, because this is the spirit is similar, but then in Hong Kong, we still based on our because we do not have financial resolution that procedure. Because in UK, when law requires the government service or certain government action, that they would have to get funds from public expenditure, they will have to, from the department head, they will bring out the money resolution first. But in Hong Kong, we do not have this procedure. So therefore, based on this, we kind of refer back to our own public expenditure regulations. And next person, Mr. Lee Chek-ren, Mr. Chairman, you talk about like the judge, the final appeal said that this is an interactive matter, but we are really being moved now, because what have they moved? They have moved it, the finance committees approving authority, because before it has to go through us. But if you look at the way they have moved us, that is, those things that has been supposed to be submitted to relevant funding proposals, so the finance committee, they have taken it out and put it to the estimates of expenditure, and I can say that besides the 4 items, they have included another 21 items, a total of 25 items that has been they were supposed to submit to us, all went to the estimates of expenditure. And in my earlier letter written to the government asking that such practice, when was the last time they have done something like this? From my recollection that at that time when they reduced this welfare subsidy, that they have included, they bypassed the put it into the submitted for estimate of expenditure. I've mentioned that they have bypassed the legislature already, but now this time you are spending money, not deducting. But then 25 items had bypassed us and went to the estimate of expenditure. And I asked when was the last time, and they tactfully told me that was before 1985, not so much recently. I want you to confirm that such a practice that was being done before 1985, not recent years. So in other words, why that practice has not been used since 1985 up to this moment. So because in 1985 there's no elected members for the Legislative Council that they can do it, nobody will complain. But now with Hong Kong's a legislature developed up to today, people are very concerned how the administration and legislature interact, and the legislature has the government or watch the government. That is very important. But now you are taking away our authority. And just now, this is have another lead to another question. When our legal consultant mentioned that with the in our estimates of expenditure, they can review that, but that's a big difference. Mr. Chairman, you know that it's impossible that you, based on one item, that you can before talk for 2 hours, 4 hours, and being conducted by you, and if there's any question you can ask. If one department can take some, each department only get 45 minutes. How are you going to review 25 new items? If you say that in the estimates with the entire provision, you're going to revise that. I want to ask, when in the estimate of expenditure, that it gets mentioned that you can reduce number of heads, reduce expenditure. But then if you included 25 items, I'll give you an example. You haven't given him much time to answer the question. You go into the second question. Okay, I'll go for the next round before I ask my second question. Yes. Okay. Mr. Secretary. The question is that, since 1985, is this? No, the question was that you mentioned that such practice has been used before 1985, but since 85 up to recent years, there's no such practice. Is that correct? Yes, it's true that we did not have any estimate of expenditure such provisions being placed to the estimates of expenditure. But what we're doing is just a way that we handle recurring or non-recurring expenses, that grouping it together and working. But since now you are going back to the British colonial time, you're worse than that time. But no such thing. Before there's no legislation council election. No, I'm looking at the operation that with the government. For 30 years you didn't look at it, and all of a sudden you want to find a way to resolve the problem. No, that's not our intention to bypass the legislation council, because we, like with the government, the legislation, the interaction, based on this, our operation, we're doing taking a practice, and what we are doing is not some major issues. It's only on recurring expenditures, based on that approach, the way we've been handling those things, that we just are putting it to that. I don't see there's a big issue. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. The legislature, council, when they look at matters, is will follow our regulations. Of course, there are traditional practices. Some people mention that, call that as constitutional practices. So I want to ask, and if they can answer that, such a traditional practices or constitutional practices cannot be changed. Just now I've heard that unless that something special has taken place, you can change that. And I want to know the existing legislature issues, with the filibustering, is a kind of a common issue now. Would that be a special environment or time? And in 1985 up to this moment, it's been a long time we haven't used such practice. But since but I believe that 1985 they do not have this frequent filibustering. But if filibustering is blocking the road, that line, the driver, of course, is trying to find ways to change the line. And you're not going to sit there and wait. There's going to be a lot of traffic stuck block behind. So, but then with the existing Democrats, they block the road. They would not allow you to change lanes, because if you change lanes, they will ask you, why don't you follow the original lane? So, but the thing is that who started filibustering? Because pro-Democrat is equivalent to filibustering, and filibustering is pro-Democrat. It's known to the public. So I think if the department is changing lanes according to the law, I don't see there's a problem. I like to hear what the legal consultant has to say. Yes, based on all those questions, I'd like to take this opportunity to express the common practices, and then constitutional practices, and during the changes, there's no fixed regulation or ruling how this should be carried out. But the thing is, if there's general practices, the admin and legislature should have a common consensus before they can create such practices. So this will refer to previous the entire process based on members of the administration and legislature interacting, and gradually based on the requirement at that time that were derived special some constitutional practices. So based on the existing situation, of course the government in our submitting document is mentioned, but that is deviated from what I can comment as a legal consultant. So, Mr. Chairman, my question is kind of is such traditional practices or constitutional practices, is that true that you cannot change it? And if it's changed, what are the consequences? Yes, Mr. Chairman, overall, for what I've explained, it's not that it cannot be changed, but the consequences, there's no clear indication what happened that in the actual practice. But normally, from whatever action taken, there will be a consequence. But this will be up to the members here to decide. So I find that the traditional practice is being damaged. But first of all, like the people who first violated this practice will be the pro-democrats. Such filibustering we never had before. Now the legislature cannot do anything without any delaying tactic. So this practice has been broken. But now that they started it, now we're taking effective measures, and you're forbidding that. I think that's too dominating. Okay, yes, yes, I think Chen Ka-keung has mentioned it's such a practice the usual government practices. But then if you're using the past this, you say legal practices, whether it's true or not, we're going to look at it later on. But the legal consultant did not say that what you're doing is 100% legal, right? So that has to do with the admin and the legislature, whether it's legal or not. Because legislature done something that it doesn't exist before. Now the administration can do it. Before there's no protest or riot, demonstrations. You can take those people to the shooting gallery, right? According to communist system. But then if you talk about such issues, that you have something to base on. 30 years ago, that if there's something that's been fixed that time, and you didn't use it for 30 years, and all of a sudden, that based on certain issue or pressure, that I do not preclude that filibustering has caused that the government problem in finance management. But that exists back in the olden days in Greece. All those departments, if the government if they don't agree with anything the government is doing, they will use filibustering. It's a tradition of way of filibustering. So if the government of Hong Kong, they are a tyranny, and they are dominating or and they make all the decisions. That is why there's a deviation. They break, and the yellow umbrella action is it's a crack. Because yes, that filibustering was planted by me. I created the crack. But then because you are further breaking apart the administration and the legislature as an authority to supervise the government, you are creating the relationship a total separation. Mr. Chen, I know that this approach may not be your idea, but then what you're doing now is since the handover of Hong Kong, but the dominating way of supervising. Not to mention about CY, he's a great liar. He thought got $50 million, and they say nothing happened. But a civil worker borrow a few $100 from a basketball coach, he's been fired. So you can see those government senior officers, how dominating they are. I just want to ask you, before you handle this, decide on this matter, why do you consult the rest of us? There should be a procedure for consulting, something that hasn't been used for 30 years. All of a sudden you wake up and then you're going to carry it out, just like Zheng Weihong, in the past demonstration, no police is going to use their baton to hit the demonstrators. Now they would hit them on the head, some young people, students, they are being hit on the head. Can you how going to face this separation of this legislation? Member, I think you're making it sound too serious. The change is not such a big change. What I want to say is that we're just using some very normal practice and some figures. We are including that in the estimates of expenditure. That's something that we've been doing all the while. But then when we say some non-recurring expenditures in the past, no doubt that we did not use this approach. But if we consider the entire approach, we don't find it totally correct. A lot of those expenditure, they do not have any new policy to support. Like Mr. Secretary, the past is a mistake, right? Yes, Mr. Mr. Chen, why can you allow the Secretary to answer? But he's wrong. He didn't say that it's correct. Yes, I respect you, Mr. Chen. So that's why I'm answering the question. Because we have reviewed the matter and we can see that some such expenditure, there's no new policy, nothing new. It's just replacing some existing facilities. And in the past, we did have such practices of passing it directly to estimates for approval. And then having looked at such ways, I don't see there's a particular different or very different way of handling. We just using the two practices, placing it together. If you talk about new facilities, do you really need the finance committee to approve? If there's not a disputable issue, then in our past practices, we for recurring expenses, we have done that. So I do not want to have such a great departure and say that this is something new. But then, because of this is one of the considerations for facing a tight schedule, and we want to simplify and to make sure that our approval for such provisions will be simplified and be taken care of faster. Mr. Chairman, the legislature is to supervise the government. Our role is based on is for the public interest, and the recent supervision has of the legislature has reached a stage that those filibustering has harmed or sacrificed our benefit. If you say that there's a usual practice in UK, if there's something that we should refer to, yes, before or after handing over, maybe before the handover, the UK practices has a greater influence. But after the handover, that is definitely a UK practice. We can use it as a practice. But our own practice should have to follow our own law, our basic law and the legislature regulations. When you talk about a constitutional practices, when our consultant has has answered very diplomatically, but I do agree to what he said. But if we break the law, we break the law. That if we break the constitutional conventions, whether it's before or after the handover, the consequence will be political. If you violate the law or certain restrictions. But then if you say usual practices, both parties have to face the consequences. But then after the thing, I'm sure that our members do remember that they have find different ways to say there's something we have besides change they're using this as a filibustering result. With such facing a big pressure and change in the existing situation, to find a way to resolve the problem, we have to try very hard for the public interest. If you talk about 85, the year 85, a long time ago, you say filibustering is the same, but you're using it now. It's just like playing chess. The most important is we should, you put public interest as the foremost interest. Of course, it would be good that you go back to our previous practice. Do not raise questions and make 1,000 amendments, which doesn't happen before. If you come to a point and know where to stop, then it's fine. Now, that's why even for the Innovation and Technology Bureau, that the things that get passed. And I think the government should think and look at our existing situation, the problem we're facing, that based on public interest, we have to make a political decision. Like members of the legislation council and the government deciding to do certain things, I think we are making a political choice. You do filibustering, you have taken your approach, and that's your and we are doing the same. Okay, from what I've heard from Chen Guai, like filibustering, like what is for finance committee, for the finance committee, finance management, and other departments, it's true that there's certain influence. But when you talk about like regulations, the members, they are specialists in filibustering. But just now when you talk about the 1985, but even 2005, you do not have such like a lot of delaying tactics, like all departments, all parties, like even in the judiciary, they are planning to have filibustering. So I want to say, if when they have such delaying tactic, are they very concerned about the detail? No, they use 8 hours or over 8 hours, 4 meetings with unlimited questions and motions, and then now they have and then they tried they passed the ITB. So but then UK they do not have the number of votes, they don't count that. We like to observe. I have seen the German council as a very good compromising culture. So I like to ask the government, can you tell the public that within this year, 2014, starting from September, October, those discussions, meetings you have taken. And why do we have to simplify? You're talking about 2014 to 15? No, 2015 to 2016. Yes, Secretary. Can I ask the Secretariat to answer this? Our recent documents issue paragraph 7 have explained that why the government has to find it necessary to make changes, because we have a lot of applications for provisions has to be handled, and the progress we have concern for this year's progress. And in the document 7A and 7B, we have listed out in 2014 to 2015, the first 6 months. We have some figures. You can see that during that fiscal year, the 2-hour meetings, the number of 2 hours meeting is 38 meetings, and this is higher than the same period, 2012 to 13 or 13 to 14, average number of meetings. So 38 meetings compared to the same period, that's high. But we also look at in the past few years, even for the entire year, it's the number of meetings is no more than 38 times compared to this year. So that's the number of meetings. But approved items, we have mentioned in paragraph 7B, the year 2014 to 15, the approved items that have been 50, items are 15 compared to the 12, 13 to 13, 14, or the previous year's average number, we are considered very low. And disregard of how you look at it, compared to 1 year's figure, that is a pretty low figure. So that's why the government have grounds to worry that we have a lot of other issues to be taken care of, and that's why we have to do what the Secretary is suggesting, how we can simplify certain approach. Yes, do you have anything to follow up on? The next person will be Mr. Kokake. Mr. Chairman, I've heard a lot of people that this legislators, whatever we do, we have to do that for public interest. like it's clearly specified that the Legislation Council is to approve like taxation and public income revenue. We are to like monitor the government's operation. That's one of the very issue or function of the separation of powers. Which, if you look at the public, people who's against him, CY as like this like chief executive, there's like most of people, there's the majority. Not too many people are happy with the performance of the government. In a lot of democratic countries, he would have stepped down a long time ago, like such as those rumors of receiving 50 million. I don't think he should have the face to stay on his position. No, like because for like a lot of those functional constituents that like that's been appointed as not voted. So like if you're using Germany is a very like democratic country, and it's like people has the right to vote, and then if they have the right to, if there's anybody who's not performing well in the government department, they can ask them to step down. Like even the Labor Department, like they are like cheating us from a lot of money besides CY. So like if we see we should have asked them to step down. We can say that like it's not because that we're trying to make filibustering a practice, but because our position as the legislation council, like our super authority, you're removing. Is it because that the basic law and the National People's Congress Standing Committee, that if you see that meeting there, they're very effective. Everything, like all resolutions are all passed. It's just like a mechanical. So if anybody who do not like follow, or if they offended CY, they will be asked to leave the meeting. Do you want to do that, or are we going to do that? It's because like if there's something we have to do, like if it's if this is public interest, we will do it. Whether like it's like whether it involves all the involves both parties. If like the people find it necessary, we're not going to. The legislation council will not stop it. We just want to ask and want to make it do better, but it's not the case. You can see that just like the ITB. So they are like putting in a lot of their people of their own. They're putting in a lot of their own people in the department. They have bypassed a normal procedure, like something that cannot have our consent. And you can call that person as the consultant, like a member. Like you can say that like his pay, those pays are not very much, of tens of thousands. But then, like the government, using their power, like taking such action, we're not supervising them. Recently, we've passed the ITB fund, and the we have members have asked questions, but we still passed it. But because there are things that we have to carry out, but if it's like some things that, like a political, approach, like using their own people, or taking action, like doing something for argument's sake, we would say that those the different secretaries and heads and. To determine now, I believe that you understand why we have to do it, because those are nothing new, and the why members here have to make use of our very limited authority to restrain the government. Well, ask the government. It's up to you. Sometimes you like to put to the estimate of expenditure. Sometimes, if you like, you can put it to our this finance committee for approval. So it's up to you to decide. Yes, if you ask this question briefly in your next round, because I've been to Germany and I can tell you that the upper Senate, it's all appointed. It's not by by voting. I'm sure some of your colleagues, if you're there, will know. And the next person will be Mr. Yip Kok Kim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having heard of Kokake, I would like to say that if we can listen to such a member making such a statement, which are not facts, such things, I hope that the Legislative Council, that we will base on proof and facts. It's not just saying something freely, accusing people, alleging people, because it's not acceptable. I would like to say the Legislation Council, I do agree that we have to supervise, and we have a very important duty to review approving our estimates of expenditures. But I've been in here in Legislative Council for some time. When you say since 1985, we have a lot of general normal practices that we carry out, but during the process, in the past 30 years, we haven't made such major changes. But why do we have to make such a change? You can feel that at the moment, with our basic law, we have the right to review such funding proposals. But we can see that people are using unlimited, never-ending filibustering to prevent the government to carry out their duty or work. This is not what we are supposed to do, to supervise such funding proposals. If it should not exist, or such expenditure should not be spent, then sure, you can do this by voting to decide. But the question is now this: in the past, things that we haven't used, like filibustering, it has this certain meaning. If Hong Kong, all the Hong Kong public felt the same and they against, but if the opposite party find that that they're against that, that he's right in opposing, and then the legislator passed that, so let the legislators take up the responsibility then, but not unlimited holding back or the delaying tactics. You can see the construction industry, because of our delaying tactics. You can say we're making late payments, and then certain infrastructure funding we are unable to approve. So some people mentioned that the chief executives popularity is really low, but I can say the Legislation Council's popularity is at a new low now. So we think come up with a reason, but not with such action or way. Say today, we keep saying that the practice, we're just doing things which is approved by the practice, or if there's any loopholes where we can make use, and then if we're allowed to do it, that's it. The government, based on the such regulations, we are just moving forward. And some members objected that say that is bypassing the Legislation Council. I don't think that's bypassing, because this still has to be approved when they are in the estimate of expenditure. So with today's discussion, it's more whether we are doing this following the normal practice of approving relevant provisions. But if we can going to spoil this the function of our council, and then we're criticizing the government using ways to get away from normal practices. And I think that Hong Kong people can see this, and this is what you don't have to respond, but this is my opinion after seeing the situation. Mr. Chen Chi-yun, there's no tradition. If you're using previous samples or practices, there's no meaning. So just now Secretariat mentioned the document 7A, 7B, mentioning that this year we have 38 meetings, and we had the most ever. But Mr. Chairman, if it wasn't you that you have your standing, that it's more than 38, it's probably 50 meetings. If we do not have the 5 days notice in advance, then we can have it any time. We will have much more. I have to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for controlling. And if the financial secretary didn't wait for the approval and print the budget, I'm sure that such meetings will carry on during the Chinese New Year. But who created this situation? This is the government's. They want to make it difficult for everybody, place something, an issue that's difficult, and they would not change the agenda so that our meeting cannot approve or review more issues. If you want to create there's a lot of meeting less approved, that's easy. When they pass the certain their own issues, and they stay there and dominate there, then you do not need any but financial budgets in the future, in the next coming years. The situation is created by you, and then you place yourself in front and dominate, take up all the time of the agenda. I tell you, the government, now you can tell me, besides this, do you have other ways to simplify that such funding proposals? You can mention it now, and we can determine it at the same time. So when you are arguing whether this bypass the legislation council, it's just playing with words. But Mr. Secretary, you have, what can the finance committee to review such issues? If you have plenty of time, you can ask 15 minutes, don't take too long, maximum 45 minutes, you should pass it. But if you don't have time, no, we have have the whole lot, put it to the estimates, and look after it at one time. So when you say those are no new policies, all those recurring expenditures, such as replacing facilities, if it's a computer, you out of order, you placing it with the same computer, yes, you can do that automatically without approval. But no, it's not replacing a bad bulb, light bulb. If you are talking about changing facilities or improving facilities, and if there's changes, now you can say that I forbid. It's not forbidding us to review. I wouldn't say forbidding, but then the time frame is definitely different from before. Would that be your new policy, to come up ways to simplify, to make such approval simpler? Mr. Member, we simplify this and to make it more efficient for the government to approve such proposals. But we have to do this rationally, and then it's legally, and then we'll say that you say it's something that we have to change because it's something that we mentioned earlier, but we will base on those principles. But a lot of those suggestions we have, there's times we'll discuss when we have those what? Do you agree that such handling, you have narrowed the members here to review, to investigate such information? Yes, I'm saying that I'm doing it with the normal recurring expenses and non-recurring expenses. I do not see that this will have restricted or limited your authority to supervise. And next person, Mr. Chen Yunhan.
Mr. Secretary, I've been in this council for a long time, many years. Like when I received this document, I asked my colleague, and I have discussed with my colleagues, and even with friends outside. One thing I agree is that the situation of the legislation council is facing difficulty, that it will take a long time to pass anything. That I can see, but this may be that in certain future political reform that we'll have to look at it. But today it's written very clearly that our duty is to supervise the government, and this supervising is a very important routine. But now we're faced with a difficulty. I've mentioned this in Beijing, because in Hong Kong today, having such situation, where are we going to go? If we're not going to give way or compromise, then we have come to today's situation. I have been to some public issue, doing a ceremony, and there's a lot of senior people waiting for our funds, and then they're waiting for 1 year, and I can see there's some difficulty. Well, it doesn't matter which party you are with. We have to come out and compromise. But this action we're taking this time is something that is desperate. But then, if the government will consider that if we cannot come up with a good way, Hong Kong is going to face a lot of difficulty in the future. So I hope the secretary will be smart. I have go after the chairman. There's several things that's been tied together, but that has to be discussed, the Disneyland, the project. And then it's about the a movie development fund, and then the Kai-Tak area, and then a lot of research, it has to be discussed. How are we going to handle those issues? So maybe some that we still have to handle. You can tie it together, but you still have to discuss. But with the situation being here, everybody expressing your standpoint, but then if you let the Hong Kong people see this, I'm thinking that Hong Kong people will feel that helpless. If we let the government do everything, there's no supervision. There cannot be. But then if we're going to supervise, how are we going to resolve problems? That we have to sit down and discuss, how can we base, as mentioned in the basic law. So I hope that this will be a very important issue in the political future. Having said this, I have to ask this, Mr. Chairman, in the future 20-something items, can we technically withdraw it and discuss that? So I've mentioned that before. I like the secretary to answer me, if it's all tied together. So for 20-something years as a council member, I do not agree. But I do agree that the problem we are facing, spending such a time achieving so little, that is impossible. But I would like to respond to what Kokake said. One country, two system, that have, mentioned that Hong Kong system, he's not here now. That when we talk about it's a good system, it doesn't mean that the policy in China is not good. We have heard that what the chairman said this year, they has go towards democratic. They are passing down, they have meet with those the county, the villages, up to the province, and before they go to the central government. But how do you develop such? I like the pro-democrats, to listen and see what they are doing there. With a country like that, having reached today's stage, a democratic communication, I think there's something they're good at. How can would you like the secretary to answer the question? I want to answer Kokake. He's not going to listen. A lot of people do not have to return home the past or going back to China, and I don't think they're going to listen. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree that there's some content we have to think. Yeah, Mr. Secretary, can you quickly answer those 20-something items that's been tied together? Yes, your concern, we understand, because the responsibility, yes, that we have to maintain such a ruling, because such topics, there's not a new policy. We have just increased more ways to approve such funding proposals, and then at that in our discussion that will be discussed based, and then we will remind the government how we can carry out their work properly. Yes, Leung Kai-chiang. Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to clarify what you said just now. The Germans, Upper China, they are being dominated. You mentioned one part and you didn't complete the sentence. But all those are being a vote and elected from the state. They become part of the state government before they are being appointed to the Senate. So that's why when you talk about those people, they are being elected by the people. That's what I want to clarify. And the second thing is that I would like to ask Mr. Secretary that your document 1, 2, 3, there are tables listing out all those items. They're saying that those will be included in the 2015-16 estimates of expenditure. So under those 20-something items, you have different categories, A, B, C, 3 types. So I cannot agree to what you disagree to what you said. Those items are they do not have any policy changes. If you look at the first one, A, the table there, if you say that, say for example, those replacing 3 new police boats, vessels, then you have changed such a depreciation policy, or you have upgraded those the functions of those boats, the facilities. There's a policy why you have upgraded them, so that the members here can agree or oppose. So when you say recurring expenses and non-recurring expenses, with such 2 concepts, they're getting more and more vague. If you look at A3, that's a 6.5 billion. So say B, there's the education department, there's a 700 item, 700. There's about over there's $60 million. You can say that it's recurring expenses, but then it's getting more and more vague between the two. If you're including this in this estimates of expenditure, and based on this, why don't I give you a suggestion that say it's there's building a taxation department, and then the custom department, they have to move, right? You can spend billions of dollars, and why don't you just put it here and make it simple? If you started this new practice, I find that you can do this for everything. It's even building a new building. It's renewing an old building, right? You can do the same for billions of dollars. And I can see that if I do not stop you here, that next year or the year after, you will do the same, and we will have to abide to it. Okay, I think Jokake asked, we do this casually? No, there's nothing casual, because if that involves any civil work, and it have to be approved by the committee, finance committee, those infrastructure, government buildings, transportation, roads, that has to be approved, right? So there are a lot of a certain grantings from those funds. It has to be approved by the finance committee. So in our past practice, we find that if there's a need that, say for example, the government needs extra hands, department heads, those have in our past practice that has to be passed by the finance committee. So a lot of those new and big major policies, issues that are concerns the legislation council, like increasing of number of hands, all those will be approved by the legislation council. We are not doing things casually or have a lot of room for taking such a practice. We are doing it very carefully, cautiously, rationally and legally. Like Mr. Leung Kai-cheung, I'm going to ask the next question later on. Thank you for your clarification. I'm not going to debate with you the German Congress, but then I will have time to talk about it other times. And if I can, Mr. Ng Sing. Based on today's document, I went through it. There's a lot of situation that made the government to find other ways to handle such matter, between the finance committee and themselves. And if it's becoming more and more political, if you look at number 73 in the basic law, that will be other members, the councillors' responsibility to approve such expenditures or public expenditures. But if we're carrying out this duty and we're facing such a lot of problem, and there's a lot of proposals that did not get passed, and we have asked the legal consultant, I think it's very simple. We are not moving forward. A lot of things the government cannot carry out. Who's suffering? The general public. So here, I would like to express that the government, whether you have to respond or not is okay. Some members mentioned that what are we practicing now? We're just practicing what has been carrying out by the legislation council. I've been a member for many years. We just sit down and talk gently in a gentleman manner. But now, is there anything for compromising or negotiation? You all know that we'll take it to end of the end of days. When you say follow general practices, where's the practice? No, I really doubt how we can carry those out those duties. When you talk about overseas or mainland China, you talk about those it's kind of irresponsible way of saying rubber stamp. But they have all those go train stations, a lot of projects, and we're delaying, and our budget's increasing. When you say that the Congress before, they're not good, they're rubber stamp. But now you can compare with Singapore and other surrounding countries. Look at Hong Kong's present situation. So because I'm in finance, there's a lot of issues that without money it doesn't work. When we have customers, they have family issues, they want to buy a flat. You have to approve it within how many days? Otherwise they cannot buy. If a company needs the money, if you don't get the credit line, then it doesn't work. So finance, now our position is supervising whether you approve or not. If you don't approve, change the content or reduce the application and apply again. But you should have a time frame. It's not like this, endless. This is trying to damage the situation. Because what I've read, number 73, I'm for the members to refer to. If we pass, we pass it. If you don't pass it, okay, they will change it to another application. Not keep asking questions, and those questions are not resolving the a proposal itself. And if you continue to be like this, not progressing, our finance committee meetings are not carrying out smoothly, I don't know why we are here. So today we sit here, we don't know when those things, the proposal is going to be completed or reviewed. So how are we going to face the general public? When we talk with people in the industry, say your finance committee behaving like this, how are we going to resolve those projects? There's a lot of people protesting, you come to the finance committee, the chairman, say, can you pass those issues quickly? I don't even know whether I'm going to continue my position here in the future or not. But if I cannot help, how can I get those projects to develop? If they don't get job, they're going to be unemployed. There's so many things. I find that our meetings and the results are, you can say, it's not in direct proportion. It's not in direct proportion. The public interest is being harmed because we're spending a lot with each of our meetings. So do we have any responsibility in the council? If we're going to carry this on, where are we going to go with all those small subcommittee and this the finance committee here, the three committees? So why don't we just sit down, think? If there are things that we don't approve, why don't you say I disagree? And okay, the chairman will handle that. Yes, Mr. Wong Yok Man.
Well, I think the conflict between the executive and the electoral has a long history. Like some members said, ask the voters not to vote for those who are filibustering. I think it's all of you who are rubber stamps. I think you can do that. You can resolve the problem. You don't even need to streamline the procedure. You don't need to go beat around the bush. Why don't you simply abolish the functions of the AFC and also our role as the watchdog monitoring government? You only focus on the consequence and not the reason why we have the filibustering. Some members said that we should learn from China. Ms. Chen Yunhan, you are a member of the NBC, CCPNC. In China, they have the consultative system, which is about the collaboration with different political parties under the leadership of the Communist Party. You have really. Why are you teaching us that? I mean, this is the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. The CCPC is a powerful organization, but you're only a rubber stamp. It's only a vase in the toilet of the Communist Party. Some of you have been members of the, MBPCP, like N. Jiang. He doesn't even know what those five stars on the flag represent. You ask us to, learn more about China and see how they have made improvements. May I speak? I think you can vote a second round. Well, you've been in this council for almost 3 years and you don't still know the rules. I'm speaking now. Why are you putting up your hand? This is what my prerogative. Why are you learning from my example? You're interrupting my speech. Well, you're saying that I'm uttering rubbish. If you're as learned as I am, it will be great. I think in China, the Communist Party has supreme power. Secondly, is the NBC 30, the State Council. Fourthly, is the Consultative Committee. This is the pecking order in the past, but for this term, the State Council has come second, and that's why Yu Jin is now ranking number 4. I know that more than you do. So what have you learned as a delegate of the NPCSC? So while you go to China, you actually don't even know how they operate. If you want efficient government, you should support the Communist Party. Whenever you have popularly elected members, that definitely the government will not have efficiency. The question, if Xiao Ailang can have his way and do whatever he wants, of course that's not possible. Just look at how LegCo meetings have been like in the last few months, and I think there are bound to be more filibustering in the FC, and we're going to have the political reform issue. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of trouble ahead. I think you can ask the voters not to vote for me in the next session. I think the people can see. I think the government is imposing things on us. It doesn't even allow for any negotiation. If they say that we don't want to negotiate with them, they can at least negotiate with the pro-government camp. We don't have much power. Why don't you simply, when there's support, the government has not talked to them. The people who are most ready to talk to you, the government is not consulting the views. If the government want to ask for a fight, we are more than willing to oblige. But they are the innocent victims. They are dragged into this, this fight. I think we have to look for the source of the problem. The source of the problem is that we have hegemony of the administration or the executive. We are now saying that the funding approvals, applications for CSS statement and OH allowance cannot be paused. I think the root of all the trouble is the hegemony of the executive. What power does LegCo have? If the pandemics want to resort to the votes, we outnumber. Even with the radicals, we only have a total of 27. We outnumber. The only clout we have is that we can veto the proposal for legal reform. We're going to, veto the proposal for legal reform. I don't think we'll be short for that. Alan Leung. Chairman, an undeniable fact is that the origin of all this issue is that C.Y. Leung, in order to establish the Information Technology Bureau, has taken out all these items and is putting them into the draft estimate for the next year. This is something that we've not done for the past 30 years. We must accept this as a starting point. So this is a change. It has changed the traditional convention of doing things. What the people of Hong Kong cherish most is that what the government does is objective and the government will go by the rules. If you change the rule which has been practiced for 30 years just because they have been filibustering in this council, then and use it as a contingency measure, I think this is not right. I don't have very much time. I'd like to discuss with the Secretary para 9 of your paper. In para 9, you say, or you ask, what sort of proposals will be incorporated into the draft estimate? What funding approvals would be referred to FC for scrutinizing the amendments to the approved commitments? So there are various factors to go by, for example, the amount of funding involved, the specific details of the proposal, implementation timetable, etc., etc. And the Secretary said that the government will be reasonable and go according to the law. What is meant by reasonable? Well, I think the C.Y. Leung, it was C.Y. Leung who said this. We didn't say this. In the past, we didn't need to say the government needs to be reasonable and has good justification. In the past, all these amendments to the estimates has to be approved by this committee. Secretary, Annex B of your paper, you divide it into A, B, C, D. It's up to you to decide whether that is reasonable or not. If you say the amount is okay, it's okay, and that you don't, there's no need for any further discussion. Then for these items, you say just as replacing certain, facilities or equipment, and that the relevant panel had already discussed the item. Now, could the Secretary take the remaining 2.5 minutes to tell me this, that is going forward? We still have certain objective criteria to decide which are the items which will be included in the draft estimates and which are the items which, as in the past, would be passed on to FC for approving the amendments to the commitments. Well, I've already explained that our approach this time is that for the non-recurrent expenditure proposals, we are aligning the treatments with those for recurrent items. In the past, we would include all the recurrent new commitments or recurrent items in the draft estimates, or even new items we would include them into the draft estimates. That is because the question is whether when only when there are new policy considerations will the items need to be approved by the FC. If it is based on existing policies and we're going to just to enhance the service standard, then we will include them in the draft estimates. In dealing with expenditures for recurrent items, we are now adopting the same, principle, and the objective is that the procedure for approving funding applications would be made made consistent and more streamlined. Chairman, so far I've only heard, I think what it boils down to is that CY Leung can decide what he can do. I've read the paper many times and I still don't understand this. That is, starting from tomorrow, how are we going to see the rules by which the government will go by? If you look at items A, B, C, they're all very arbitrary. It's up to you to decide whether or not you need to come to FC for approving the amendments to the draft estimate. If you say it is not necessary, then it's not necessary. Is that right? If you compare this table with the recurrent items that we include in the draft estimate, if you make that comparison, I believe you can find the consistency there and how that is we are dealing with the non-current and recurrent items on the same basis. Mr. Wong Kok-heng. Thank you. Chairman, we've had the discussion for so long already, and I think the issue is like Mr. Raymond Wong and Dr. K.K. Kwong said, the two of them are being very honest. They are using the prerogative electrical members to filibuster and resulting in this predicament for the FC. In the three tables, we can see clearly that for 2014-2015, we have had 38 meetings. It's the highest number for the past few years. But the number of funding approvals approved is the smallest, only 15. Why is it that we have had so many meetings and yet only such a few items have been approved? It's all because of the filibustering. Why did we have the filibustering? They've also explained very clearly that they want to actually show the opposition to CY Leung, and they don't want to approve anything proposed by CY Leung's administration. Actually, the Pan-Democratic Camp had already declared to the public that they will actually adopt a non-cooperative movement. Why are we being so forgetful? We're not talking about a typical relationship between the executive and the legislature. The relationship between the two are now very abnormal and unreasonable. Why do we have this situation?
Starting from 2012, this term of LegCo, the situation has been like this. Ever since CY Leung was returned, even before he assumed office, this is what the Pan-Democrats have been doing. In the past, only those who are more radical were in this, but now the entire Pan-Dem camp is in this. That is why we have this situation. This is an abnormal situation. This is the root of the problem. So in Annex A, the administration has said that they have no choice but to do this, that they have to race against time in order to subsume those 25 items into 3 categories. The first one are those deferred from 2013-14. There are 4 of them, and they're included in this year's appropriation bill. The other category, about 10 odd, those are not controversial. They have always been done. So they, again, have dealt with them this way. I think the administration is racing against time. It wants to streamline procedures in response to the opposition camp's filibustering, and the administration has no choice. I believe this is indeed lawful, rational, and reasonable. If you don't do this, you are wrong. If you do this, you protect the interest of the public, and I think you have done the right thing. So, if you talk about the root cause of the problem, Mr. Wong Yok-man was asking about this. The root cause is what the opposition camp is doing. It wants to make life difficult for this term of government, and let us have no false hope. We are not going to have better days in this term of government. As long as CY Leung stays in the post, this is what they are doing. Today, we are in this situation. This is all caused by the opposition camp. Chairman, they do this. They waste time. They waste resources. The secretary said before that we have already wasted $2.5 billion public money. No new funding proposals have been supported. The construction industry is facing underemployment or unemployment. On the 8th of March, over 5,000 people. The police said there were 3,500 at the peak. They came to LegCo here to petition. They walked from Cheta Road to here, but members paid no heed to them. Therefore, I think the administration really has no choice but to do this. I think we should support what it is doing. Members, this is an abnormal situation. When things are abnormal, the administration has no choice but to do this. And this is all caused by the opposition camp. Ms. Emily Lau, Chairman, I don't know whether the situation now is normal or abnormal, but this is the actual situation in Hong Kong. According to the basic law, the administration should let Beijing know the actual situation in Hong Kong. Rimsky-Yun said that it is not the end of the world if the constitutional package is not supported, and people say the sky will not collapse. But the president of LegCo said that Hong Kong will become ungovernable if the constitutional package is not supported. Maybe the secretary thinks that governance is already very difficult in Hong Kong now. Now, what is the problem? Have you talked to your colleagues in the administration as to whether they also think the same as members who have spoken, or do you think the responsibility lies with the other party? If you continue to cheat yourselves and refuse to face the problem, Chairman, let us not talk about the Finance Committee, but in fact the operation of the entire Council will be very difficult. I have been elected to LegCo for many years. I didn't want to do this, but you created all that, Chairman. Our president said, if one wears shorts and wants to come into LegCo, the processing will take over an hour. What if 20-odd people wear shorts to come into LegCo? How long it will take? How can people handle something like that? Mr. Ng Leung Sing said he doesn't know whether he is going to stand in the elections next time, but it has nothing to do with us. We want to abolish all the functional constituencies, and my advice for you is that you will be an eyesore if you contest for the chairmanship of Finance Committee again. Chairman, we have this meeting today. Well, last time when you had a discussion on this, I was in Taiwan, but I am all for this meeting. For no reason, you withdrew 4 items. You were trying to explain yourselves. You said because you were holding long meetings. If this is the reason why you can withdraw those items, then I would ask you, why don't you withdraw all the items? Just withdraw anything. And Chairman, you will have a better time. You don't need to sit there. And you could have spent time with your wife on Valentine's Day instead of staying here with Wong Kwok Heng, who was willing to sit here day after night, night after day. So, Secretary, you say there was a big backlog. You say there was huge congestion at FC. Why don't you just withdraw everything and put everything into the appropriation bill? But don't you think there will also be congestion when we study the appropriation bill? Secretary, Chairman, as I said, we did scrutinize the recent workings of the FC because of filibustering, and we thought that we should look at things again. But we only did an objective review. We were just trying to manage funding proposals. But just answer my question. Why didn't you withdraw all the items? But some items have to do with policies, and because of conventions, we believe they should still be submitted to FC. What about those 4? We took another look, and we looked at the public finance ordinance and also our previous practice. We believe they could be put into the estimates for the sake of streamlining procedure, and we did not bypass LegCo. You mean you have looked at the other items and they are different, is that right? Well, we will continue to do things on the previous foundation. We will not do whatever we like. So are you saying that these 4 could be withdrawn but not the others? Is that right? Well, we looked at the estimates for this year. We have put in some non-recurrent items as well. We said we should take a comprehensive look, and procedurally and legally, and also looking at conventions, we have the basis to do that. In the last 30 seconds, why don't you tell us the criteria? First of all, legally speaking, the administration can put items into the appropriation bill. In the past, we did not do so. And we were trying to see whether we were doing something different for non-recurrent and recurrent expenditure items. And we found that, in fact, many recurrent expenditure items are put into the appropriation bill because there is no new policy or policy involved. And therefore, we thought that we could do that for recurrent items, and the procedures can therefore be streamlined. Next one. Ann Chang. Thank you, Chairman. I think Ms. Emily Lau asked very valid questions. If you can put items into the bill for consideration by Council, why don't you do it for every item? Let me ask the question in another way. Secretary, 4 items have been referred to the Council, and you would reserve 5, 6, 7 at FC. And FC again will spend many sessions on those items, and still they are not supported. Then are you going to move those to the Council as well, or will you just withdraw them and not return them to LegCo? Secretary, are you talking about Annex B? I'm preparing the paper. Let me see. This one. Do you have a number there? LegCo paper. FC 83. Stroke 14 to 15 bracket 01. Let me try to assist. In another paper, FC 121. FC 121. We have Annex B there. We have included major commitment items under the general revenue account included in the 2015-16 draft estimates. No. Secretary, Annex B is for items that are newly added, but I'm talking about your letter dated the 29th of January. FC 83, bracket 01. You have 7 items, right? But you have put them in 2 tables. The first 4, you say, would be put before Council directly, and they are included in the 15-16 budget. But 5 to 7, you will still have them presented to FC. And my question for you is, if we still cannot tackle these 3 and waste a lot of time on filibustering, will you also put these 3 into the 2016-17 appropriation bill? Secretary, if I understand correctly, item 5 has been supported. Fisheries Development Loan Fund 6 and 7 have to do with the I&T Bureau. Those 2 will not be put into the appropriation bill. No, my question is, if we still do not put them in the 2016 or 15-16 budget, if the I&T Bureau proposals are not resolved, then can you just present them to Council? the LegCo has to consider these proposals and approve them, but they have been with the FC for very long. And they have also gone to panels. If they are not supported, why don't you just allow them to go to council directly? Well, the main consideration is, as we explained in the paper, until this moment, our practice is newly created directorate posts will always be presented to FC. So if there is any increase of power for the directorate grade, they will go to FC. Okay, Secretary, my understanding is what you are saying is if we respect you, we will put them here for you to approve. But if there is a need, you have the authority to take them directly to the council. Is that right? I'd just like to repeat our practices. Okay, I understand. I know you want to bring in some changes. In certain papers, you said that you are changing your practice this time around. No, this paper is FC 121 stroke 14 to 15 bracket 01. In para 7, need for change. This is because items are not supported after many meetings have been held. Will you consider setting up a particular system, say if after so many hours the item is still not approved, they will automatically go to council? Let us agree on this. Allow the secretary to answer, all right? I think I will just read. We have explained the procedures for handling such matters. Ms. Dari Lee, Chairman, I can really see that the administration has no choice, and the opposition camp has chased the administration into a cul-de-sac. It is now trying to paralyze council. It is staging a non-cooperative movement. You have told the public in a media session that you will want to paralyze LegCo and you would only leave open a path for humanitarian rescue. That is what you said. That is why we have a big backlog here in LegCo. My question for the administration is, we have a new situation. I can observe that filibustering has spread to cover the entire pan-democratic camp. How do you, what is your assessment of the new situation? What is the worst scenario that you have in mind? Will you make an open appeal that people should do what is right? Let us look at IT Bureau. It is something good. It is supported by the industry.
And that Hong Kong is lagging behind, but FC is not approving the item. So what contingency plan does the government have, Secretary? Well, thank you for the question. I think our approach this time, if you say that this is something that we are doing to counter the fight against filibustering, I wouldn't agree. I think the filibustering will not really have a major impact. Going forward, the items for LegCo to approve, there's still many items for LegCo to approve, including many public expenditure items, infrastructural projects, housing projects. There are many projects which we still need to come to LegCo for funding, and also many of these items mentioned in the budget and the policy address will need to be approved by the FC. Looking at the timetable, if the filibustering situation doesn't improve, I'm worried that many members of the public and also projects which are of concern to the public and also projects that we've been fighting for a long time until we obtain commitment and policy support from the government will not be able to be implemented on time. I've been attending FC meetings for a long time. Even though it's not within my portfolio, I have seen many such experiences in FC. There are going to be many public work projects which have grave impact on public life, people's livelihood, and the development of our society. There are still many items left. We don't have very much time. And should there be any further delay, then for some of the projects, because the tendering period would expire soon, and if they were not approved, we need to call tender again. And if we did that, then it will have a major impact on the timetable, and the cost will also overrun. So, of course, members have their own respective views regarding the infrastructural projects. But overall speaking, they are very important for the development of Hong Kong, and this is something of concern to the people of Hong Kong and the people working in the respective industries. During the consultation period, we fought for the support of the people for those policies. Some of these policies are about the old age allowance, and also the double payment for the CSSR allowance, and many people are worried whether or not we are able to implement that on time. There's a lot of worry. I think the public can see that there are all these concerns, and the government doesn't seem to be able to move forward at all. But those members who are responsible for the filibustering doesn't seem to realize the impact. So have you tried to talk to them about the impact and try to persuade them not to filibuster? Secretary. Of course, if members are willing to listen when we try to communicate, I'm certainly willing to do that. Our policy bureau, our colleagues in the policy bureau have worked very hard to fight for the support of members so that our proposals can be approved. I still have two members for the second round, Dennis Kwok and Lee Chet Yan. Shall we say 4 minutes for each of you? Having heard the discussion so far, the Bureau kept saying that they would stick to their rationale. They will determine, according to circumstances, whether or not the proposal will be put to the FC. But having heard his explanation so far, I have not heard any reasonable, any objective standard that they go by, and I think they have actually broken away from the established practice. In paragraph 6, you say that for important new proposals and incorporate them into the draft estimate, then the Bureau and Department will consult the relevant panels. I'd like to remind the Secretary that when you go to these panels or committees, I think eventually the chairman of the panel may ask members whether they agree that the item or the funding proposal or be referred to the FC for discussion, and then members can take a vote on that. That has always been the practice. Even if you go to a particular panel, that panel will make the decision whether or not the matter will be referred to the FC for a decision. So if you consult the panel in this manner, you're actually asking the panel whether or not the item should be referred to the FC for decision, rather than for you to decide when to take it out and when to include it in the appropriation bill. So in your paper, you will not explain when you need to put it into the appropriation bill. Mr. Alan Leung and Mr. Chen asked the question as saying that they don't see any objective criteria. The usual practice is that you consult members of the panel to see whether or not an item should be referred to the FC. That's the system. It's not up to you to decide if you like it to refer to the FC or not refer to the FC. That has not been the usual practice. Secretary. Thank you for the question. I think the established practice or convention and the way we cooperate is interactive, to quote the Secretariat of the Council. We fully respect the interaction between the government and LegCo, and the basis of our cooperation in looking at the policy funding applications. So it's up to you to decide how what the interaction should be like. There still needs to be an objective standard to decide when an item would need to be taken to the FC. If you say you can do anything, if it is interactive, you can bypass the FC, or you can take out the item if you so like. So that means there are no rules to go by, and it's not a good thing even for the Bureau. Why do you want to do it this way? Is it because one or two members are filibustering? You are, simply abolishing the long-established system. I don't think that is the proper response from the government. Now, even if we are now discussing any new proposal, of course, I understand your queries, but I think such queries have not affected policies of we still have a very good basis and very good interaction at the panel level. So even if we have the problem of filibustering, many of these policies, when we implement our promotion policies, there is still trust and interaction. Claudia Mo, we have 2 more members for the first round. I don't think I can entertain the second round for the other members. 5 minutes for Ms. Mo. Thank you. Throughout the morning, I think what we've heard so far is that the government is not acting like a gentleman. It's difficult for the secretary to represent the administration here because he dare not, speak loudly on behalf of the government. Your views about the CY Leung's administration, that is, LegCo should toe the government's line and do whatever the government wants to do, to work in tandem with the government. So LegCo is actually a rubber stamp. If the government wants anything to be approved, it will get it approved. If the government wants to expedite the passage of some item, you can do it, then you would do it. What you're doing now means that you can scrap the entire FC. Why are you making things difficult for our chairman so that he is actually put into this difficult predicament? Given the attitude of the government, I don't think you need LegCo at all because the government can do whatever it likes. You kept telling about objectivity, non-recurrent, strategic use, terms like that. You say that this is normal. I beg your pardon, I'm saying this is very abnormal. The administration or the executive, vis-a-vis the, as compared with the attitude of LegCo, you don't understand the meaning of separation of power. You don't need separation of power in Hong Kong. You don't. So, well, if the government wants to do something, it would do it. If we do not, toe the line, you think that you can play all these tricks. You have this attitude. I think the government's attitude is very naive and ridiculous. I don't need a response from the administration. I've heard too much rubbish already this morning. Lee Cheuk-yen, you have 4 minutes. Chairman, it is obvious now that Lee Cheuk-yen, why don't you focus on the question that you put to our legal advisor? Okay, I have one question. I'll make a brief statement first. Throughout the whole meeting, the government has told us only one thing, that in the past there used to be rules, now there are none. And the government can do whatever it likes. It can take out any items it wants. And Ms. N. Dr. N. was actually wearing on behalf of the government and suggested the government has not taken enough of these items out of the FC agenda. According to your paper, you're saying that you're not taking them out now, but according to the law, you have the authority to do that. So it's up to you. In future, as N. Jiang said, you can take out the IDB item and take it straight to the council. So there seems to be no rules at all. The establishment camp wants to go back to the colonial days, where all of us would simply be rubber stamps, and not only that, the government doesn't even need to come to FC. It would be best that we abolish the FC as well. So we're actually giving up our power to monitor the government, and that is really regrettable. I'll come back to my question for the legal advisor. 25 items have now been included into the appropriation bill. There are some items, and according to you, you said that some of these items could be amended. But according to the FC's rules of procedure, you can only deduct a head or a subhead. You cannot. Now, this is my question. Let's say if they have a new commitment, can we cut it? Or if there's an old commitment, they want to top up the commitment, or would I have the power to disapprove it? Legal advice. According to the rules of procedure, members can move motions to cut the funding for any particular head or subhead in the budget or the draft estimate. But it is only in respect of the amount, but not the subheads. There are many expenditure items for the subheads. If there are different expenditures, and if I want to cut down the salaries for the CE, I can make the deduction under the respective subhead. Even if I cut the subhead, you can still not cut the CE salaries. There are now 25 items. Okay, do you admit that LegCo members cannot just take out those items and vote on them? According to our procedure, the amendment should only be in respect of the funding for a particular subhead. According to the purpose as suggested by the controlling officer, normally the purpose is it's hybrid purpose. So legally, even if the motion were passed, it cannot. Doesn't mean that it will be implemented. So, if there's no voting in the FC, then we cannot vote on those 25 items. You can only cut down on the amount, but you cannot take out the item. So, legal advisor. So if we reduce it to 0, we may be actually take out the others as well. Well, some members ask what happens if we reduce the amount to 0. If the subhead includes a certain item that you don't agree with. Richard Yuan, I think the time is up, and we already have reached the time for us to adjourn. Dennis Kwok had just given me a motion a minute ago, and I don't think I have time to deal with that motion. If you really want to move a motion, I believe you need to do so earlier. We simply don't have time, and we don't have time for members to debate your motion. I propose that we extend our meeting by 15 minutes. I don't believe we need to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Secretary?
I'd just like to make a brief comment. The legal advisor advanced a viewpoint. I'd just like to reiterate my stance. This is not a new stance. I think the Secretariat of LegCo knows the administration stance, and that is whether the LegCo can amend the appropriation bill. The administration has always had the stance. In 1999, we mentioned that this has something to do with Article 74 of the Basic Law, and we have already expressed our stance to the LegCo. On the 4th of February, Mr. Dennis Kwok wrote in, but you had not replied. I hope you will give a reply to Mr. Dennis Kwok. The PS? Chairman, we have already provided a consolidated reply. I don't think so, because you referred to Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen's letter only. No, we referred to 2 letters. In fact, Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen also wrote on the 26th of February. Please go back and look at those 2 letters again. Sorry, Ms. Lau is not coming through. Well, I cannot ask them to respond to so many things. I don't know what members are asking them to respond. But before I adjourn the meeting, I'd like to remind you that on the 20th of March, we have 2 sessions, and that is for scrutiny of proposals. Thank you.